the way that these things are discussed is not like this. And I think she has at least the right and the dignity, they owe her that, not to behave like they've behaved today. I think round the country, in the Conservative Party and outside the Conservative Party, there will be real disgust at the behaviour of some of our cabinet ministers who are not fit for their positions if they behave like this. They should be apologising and they should shut up, for God's sake, because that's the worst thing we want.
Well, that's pretty clear. Ian Duncan-Smith, thanks very much indeed for that.
I would like to see Article 50 revoked. That is preferable to crashing out of the EU with no deal.
It may well be that there is a majority for some form of so-called soft Brexit, customs union, single market, inside the House of Commons. Will the SNP's 35 MPs be part of that new consensus?
Well, that's not our first preference. Our first preference is to remain, and the best way of achieving that is to have another referendum or to revoke Article 50. At the moment, I think it's fair to say that the option of remaining is not off the table, and it's not beyond the bounds of possibility by any stretch of imagination. So as long as our first preference remains an option, that's what the SNP will back.
Does the third meaningful vote come back this week after the indicative votes?
Well, what we've said is we will bring it back when we're confident we have the numbers. There's no point bringing that back before. We're taking soundings.
You don't know at this stage?
Well, we're continuing to take soundings, and those are ongoing today and in the coming days.
If the Commons votes for some so-called softer Brexit, votes for customs union, alignment with the single market, whatever it might be, some kind of compromise vote in the House of Commons, and then comes back to the government and says, this is what the Commons can agree. The House of Commons can finally agree and unite around one thing. Does the government simply ignore that, or do you then honour the vote of the House of Commons?
Well, we'd have to look at what was voted on, because obviously we'd need to see if it passes and where...
So you might ignore the vote of the House of Commons.
Well, the vote itself would potentially collide with fundamental commitments the government has given in their manifesto. And so one of the key issues there is you potentially have Parliament instructing the government to do something which is directly counter to what it was elected to deliver, counter to what is in its manifesto.
So what do you do?
Well, first of all,
forgive my frustration, it's a very straightforward question. What do you do?
Well, that vote of itself would not be binding, but obviously, as we have
So it would not be binding. You could ignore the vote of the House of Commons on an indicative vote.
Well, potentially it would collide, as I say, with the manifesto. We would need to see that. But
let's talk about next week, because that is when the House of Commons tries to take back control from the executive. And there's going to be probably a series of so-called indicative votes. It looks as if the likeliest option for a cross-party consensus or a majority is on what's called a softer Brexit, involving the customs union and the single market, to get a deal through the House of Commons.
We will go into this arguing the case that we've been making for months about a close economic relationship and a public vote. We'll see where the majority is. We're doing this in good faith. That's why we're already having these discussions. But I do come back to this, because this is my biggest fear about the process. Andrew, let me please make this point. My biggest fear about this is, if the Prime Minister is going to let a process begin, but she won't own the outcome, she will collapse it if we find a majority. And I think she may want then to try her vote on her meaningful vote again. And that's the worst. That will make a bad situation even worse. So the critical question is this a serious exercise? We want it to be. We're going in good faith, and we're already having those discussions.
And what you fear, to be clear about it, is that you get some kind of soft Brexit agreed in the House of Commons, or whatever it is, or Labour's deal, whatever it is, and then at the end of that process, once that's been agreed, she brings her meaningful vote back yet again, and force majeure gets it through and sticks with that.
The fear is that we start down the road of trying to find where there's a majority. It's a road we should have gone down 2 years ago. I think there's an appetite for that. I think there's a yearning for that in Parliament. I think it's across the House. There's the substantive issue of what the deal should look like. Then there's the process deal, which is, should any deal be wrapped in a confirmation vote? Got to look at that. But the point is, if we are to do that and get to a conclusion of that exercise, the Prime Minister then has to own the outcome, because otherwise we're going down a road which she is using really to frustrate the process.
Well, another extraordinary day of twists and turns here in Westminster. I'm here all day with all the Brexit latest, but before that, the sport and the weather. Jesus Christ, it's like an episode of Don't Tell the Bride. There's some complete fucking bellend running around 7 days before the big day, pissing his pants, not a fucking clue what he's doing, hasn't organised the car, the catering, the flowers. I thought I could come in on a jet ski. No. Are you sure about the jet ski? No. What about an aquatic personal watercraft? That's a fucking jet ski, Theresa. No one wants the jet ski. Shut up about the fucking jet ski. She's got one thing right, though. The UK has slid into a crisis, slowly and surely over 10 painful years. And who got us here? This lot. This gaggle of obdurate, arrogant, stubborn, unrepentant, heartless bunch of self-serving arseholes who have spent the last 3 years trying to keep their useless, irrelevant political parties together while sleepwalking the country into a food blender. Every MP in that building should bow their head in shame. You know, I had more respect for this useless bunch of wankers during the expenses scandal. You know, at least that particular omni-fuck suggested a modicum of ingenuity, a bit of fucking brain. At least someone in the country was getting something out of it, even if it was just a free fucking duck house. What a fucking shit fight. Yeah, exactly. How did this happen? Seriously? Do you mean how did we end up with Brexit? That's like asking why is the moon there? Okay, all right, simple answer? Simple answer, they broke the contract. Okay, we are all obsessed in this country with your average Leave voter. That stereotype of an over 50 southern gammon-faced male reader who wants to turn the UK into a neoliberal deregulated paradise. But your average Leave voter explains nothing because they were always going to vote Leave no matter what. It's your marginal Leave voter that explains everything. 26% of UKIP voters in the 2015 election voted as a protest against the three main parties. You translate that sentiment to the referendum and boom! These are the people that saw their prospects go down the shitter, who lost their job stability, who had to move house because of the bedroom tax, who suddenly saw no prospect of their kids going to university, that had their disability benefits denied by some corporate box-ticking twat. We are in this mess because they broke the contract between a citizen and his government. A government's basic job is to extort money from the working people in the form of taxes. I'll have some of that, thank you very much, and we're fine with that, so long as the government redistributes that money wisely and fairly. Austerity broke the contract. When you make a conscious choice not to invest in education and at the same time massively rack up the private cost of further education, you break the contract. When you outsource the distribution of benefits to private companies whose main motivation is profit, you break the contract. When the private sector decides who deserves help and who doesn't, the government is essentially saying it can't do its job. It's given up on delivering. Housing? Fuck me. The entire UK economy is basically a massive laundry for Russian dirty money via the property market, which inflates prices so that most people can barely afford rent, let alone a deposit for a house. This would never happen in a country with reasonably functioning institutions with the well-being of its citizens at its heart. These are all massive public policy failures which has led to a breakdown of trust between the electorate and the government. You sprinkle a tiny bit of it's immigrants' fault and we pay the EU too much, it's going to resonate with the have-nots and the struggling. That's how populism works. It masks political failure by blaming others. We have a first-past-the-post democratic system that doesn't work, that disenfranchises massive swathes of the electorate. 4 million people voted UKIP in 2015. They end up with 1 MP. That's not healthy for anyone. You live in a safe parliamentary seat. You don't have a say. Not really. And yet we're amazed when there's a vote that actually matters and the people vote for fuck you and you're better off in bullshit. I have to get my groceries from a food bank. They wanted to send a message. They did not want the status quo, and that's how you get Brexit. Brexit was sold to us as a panacea. In fact, it's the opposite. But Brexit has achieved one thing. Whilst Brexit won't solve any of our underlying problems, it has exposed them. Our constitution, our institutions, our democratic system and our politicians, they are not fit for purpose. If they don't deliver Brexit soon, they have failed at their jobs. But if they do, at this late stage, they will be knowingly and willingly fucking the country up the shit pipe. So either way, Parliament's thin veneer of competency will finally be entirely worn away. This is the empire coming back to bite. Brexit is Pax Britannica coming home to roost. By taking back control, we have revealed to the world that our country is out of control. The UK chooses irrelevance. The UK chooses to give up its seat at the table. The geopolitical cost is immeasurable, not just because of Brexit, but because of this demonstration of our constitutional impotence. We're about to become a rogue state. We are about to become balkanised. Welcome to Great Britain, self-obsessed with its own importance whilst being fed for breakfast to any and all trading blocs who are feeling a bit peckish. Welcome to Great Britain, a middling economy with a power vacuum at its heart with no idea where to go next. It's going to be brutal. China, Japan, the US, they're all circling for their Brexit dividend. The UK has ceased to function, and to top it all off, we have a Prime Minister who's gone rogue. The Maybot has turned into HAL from 2001, and all passengers and crew are expendable. Strong and stable. Where's Guy Fawkes when you need him? You know, I voted Remain, okay? But I've always considered myself to be a bit of an EU sceptic. But now I'm a UK sceptic. You know my overwhelming emotion? No, not anger. Sadness. It's so sad. Thank you, John. Well, we could do with some better weather here because it's all doom and gloom here in Westminster. Coming up, I spoke earlier with Amber Rudd and we'll be...